The night was darker than anything Lyra's sky had ever seen, a black so thick it seemed to swallow even the moonlight. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing in the silent forest as if nature itself were holding its breath. She had been running, dodging, fighting against hands that seemed determined to drag her into the shadows. And now, after what felt like an eternity, she was thrown violently into the cold stone floor of a cavernous lair. Pain flared in her shoulder as she hit the ground, and she scrambled to her knees, gasping for air. Her chest heaved, throat dry, eyes darting in every direction. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of musk and something darker, something dangerous. A slow, deliberate step echoed in the chamber, followed by another, until a figure emerged from the darkness like a shadow materialized into flesh. Caden Storm. Even in the dim light, she could see him clearly. Tall, broad-shouldered. His presence demanding the room bend to him. Every step he took seemed to crush the air beneath it. His eyes, sharp and cold as ice, pinned her to the spot, and for a moment Lyra felt her defiance falter. Most people would have cowered, would have begged, would have collapsed under the weight of his stare. But she wasn't like most people. "I've been waiting for you," Caden said. His voice a low growl that seemed to vibrate in her chest. It wasn't just words, it was authority, danger, and promise all rolled into one. He circled her slowly, predator to prey, every movement precise, measured. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Waiting to kill me?" she asked, her voice steady, though her body screamed with fear. Caden stopped and leaned close, his breath brushing her ear. "No, not yet," he said, and the faintest smirk curved his lips. "You see, I don't just kill anyone who crosses my path. Some earn the right to live. You, Omega, will earn yours tonight." Her stomach lurched. She had heard rumors of him, whispers in the wind from towns miles away. Caden Storm, Alpha King, feared by all, merciless and untouchable. And now, here he was, standing over her, offering a challenge. Lyra swallowed hard, forcing her fear into submission. "And what must I do?" Caden's eyes glinted with amusement. "Survive a night in my bed. That is all." Her breath caught. The words weren't just shocking, they were insane. "Your bed?" she asked, disbelief laced in every syllable. He leaned back, folding his arms over his chest. "Yes, spend the night. Survive until dawn. Do that and I set you free. Fail, and I promise you, death will come swiftly." The cave seemed to tilt. Her mind raced. This was madness. And yet, she felt the faint stir of something else. An undercurrent in the air that went beyond fear, something magnetic, dangerous. Something about him called to her. Lyra's Omega instincts screamed at her to flee, to fight, to survive. But Caden's presence was more than physical. It was consuming, almost invasive. She could feel the pull of his dominance, strong enough to shake her core. Her pulse hammered, her body tense, every nerve alive with electricity. "You don't understand," she said, trying to maintain control, trying to push back the instinctive shiver that ran down her spine. "I'm not some prize to play with." Caden's eyes narrowed, and the smirk faded. "No, Omega. You're not a prize. A test. And perhaps more." He circled her once more, slow, deliberate, his gaze never leaving hers. Every movement was calculated to provoke, to unbalance, to make her question her every decision. Lyra felt her breath hitch, a subtle, dangerous excitement coursing through her veins. Then, without warning, he seized her arm, yanking her roughly to her feet. The heat of his grip burned through her gloves, skin prickling with fire. He didn't hurt her, at least not yet, but the strength behind his hold was a clear reminder of who commanded this space. "You have a choice, Omega," he said, his voice low, dangerous, almost a growl. "Accept it, or face a death you cannot even imagine." Lyra's mind raced. She had been captured before, threatened before, but never had she been put in a position like this. The night stretched before her like an endless void, every shadow whispering danger, every sound a threat. And yet, despite the terror, something inside her stirred. a defiance, a fire she hadn't known she possessed. "You're insane," she whispered more to herself than to him. Caden tilted his head, the faintest smirk returning. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply aware of your potential, Omega. There's more to you than you realize." Lyra frowned. "Potential for what?" Caden's gaze darkened, and a flicker of something almost vulnerable passed through his eyes before it hardened again. "Survival. Power. Destiny. You have a bloodline, Omega. A prophecy tied to it. One that has lain dormant for centuries. And tonight, you will begin to awaken it." Lyra's stomach twisted. Prophecy. Destiny. Power. Words she had heard whispered in old tales, stories her mother had dismissed as fantasy. And yet, hearing them spoken here, in the presence of Caden Storm, the Alpha King feared by all, it felt real. Terrifyingly real. "Prophecy?" she asked, voice trembling slightly, though she tried to mask it. "You mean I'm supposed to do something magical?" Caden's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. "Not magical. Necessary. You, Omega, are not ordinary. And tonight you will either prove it or fall." Her pulse thundered in her ears as the weight of his words sank in. She wanted to argue, to fight, to refuse, but even as she opened her mouth, a cold, creeping realization crawled over her. She failed, she would die. There was no room for negotiation, no chance for mercy. Survival was the only option. And yet, another, stranger, darker thought crept into her mind. What if surviving Caden Storm's bed wasn't just about avoiding death? What if it was about something else? Something terrifying, something she couldn't yet name. "Fine," she said finally, her voice firm, though her body betrayed her with trembling. "I'll do it. I'll survive the night." Caden's smile widened, eyes gleaming with something feral. "Good. Because the night is just beginning, Omega. And I promise you, it will not be easy." He stepped closer, and the air between them crackled with tension. It was more than physical, more than fear. It was magnetic, dangerous, unpredictable. And Lyra realized, with a shiver she couldn't hide, that nothing in her life had prepared her for this, or for him. "Follow me," he said, his hand extended. She hesitated. Her instincts screamed to run, to flee, to escape the pull of his dominance. And yet, something inside her, a hidden, untamed part of her, urged her forward. As they walked through the dimly lit corridors of his lair, Lyra's mind raced. Questions spun in her head like a cyclone. What was this prophecy? Why her? Why had Caden Storm chosen her for this twisted challenge? And most importantly, what exactly did surviving his bed entail? The room they entered was vast, decorated in stark contrasts of dark wood and flickering firelight. The bed was enormous, carved from ancient wood, with silken sheets that shimmered under the glow. It was inviting, deadly, dangerous, and for the first time Lyra realized the full weight of Caden Storm's dominance, not just as an alpha king, but as a man who demanded obedience, submission, and yet, something more. He stood behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. "You have until dawn, Omega," he said, voice low and commanding. "Survive, endure, and you'll earn your freedom. Fail, and there will be no mercy." Lyra swallowed hard, her throat dry, her heart pounding with fear and something else. Desire. Anticipation. She couldn't tell. All she knew was that the night stretched before her like an uncharted wilderness, filled with danger, power, and a darkness she didn't yet understand. And then, as she stood at the edge of the bed, Caden's hand brushed her arm, a touch so brief yet electric that it sent shivers down her spine. "You're mine for the night," he said, a promise, a warning, and a challenge all at once. "And Omega, I do not lose." Lyra's eyes widened, her pulse spiking, her breath catching in her throat. The first night had begun, and she had no idea if she would survive it. Caden circled her slowly once more, his presence overwhelming. Every movement he made was calculated, deliberate, as though he were testing her limits without a single word. Lyra felt like a flame caught in the wind, trembling, alive, yet terrified that one wrong move could snuff her out. "You're nervous," he said, his tone teasing, almost playful, yet edged with danger. "I can smell it." Fear, anticipation, curiosity. All of it wrapped into one irresistible omega scent. Lyra flinched, her gaze snapping to his. "I'm not afraid of you," she spat, though her voice shook slightly. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, knuckles white. Caden's lips twitched in the faintest smile. "No, but fear will make tonight very painful for you. But I sense something else in you. Fire. Defiance. That will make this night interesting." He moved closer, so close that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Hear the subtle rumble of his voice vibrating against her skin. It was intoxicating, and she hated herself for it. Omega instincts were powerful, primal, meant to react to alpha dominance. But this was Caden Storm, the man whose very presence demanded submission. "You think you can survive this night with your pride intact?" he whispered, leaning down so his lips brushed near her ear. His voice was soft, but every word dripped with authority. "Because pride can be fatal." Lyra's heart hammered, every nerve alight with tension. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself, to push down the fluttering of nerves and something deeper, more dangerous stirring in her chest. I don't care about your games," she said, her voice low, firm, trying to hold her ground. Caden's laugh was low, rumbling, dangerous. "Games," he murmured. "Omega, this is not a game. This is survival." He finally stepped back and gestured toward the bed. "Step onto that bed," he commanded, voice low, leaving no room for argument. "And begin." Lyra's eyes widened. She hesitated, 1,000 instincts screaming at her to resist, to flee. And yet, a strange compulsion tugged at her, urging her forward. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she moved cautiously toward the bed, her body tense, every muscle primed for defense. The sheets shimmered in the firelight, inviting yet dangerous, as if the bed itself were a trap waiting for her to falter. She took a deep breath and stepped onto it, feeling the silk against her skin, smooth, cool, almost mocking in its luxury. Caden's gaze never left her. He watched every motion, every flicker of hesitation. The air between them was charged, electric, impossible to ignore. Lyra's omega instincts flared, warning her, yet urging her forward, caught in a struggle between desire and survival. "Good," Caden murmured, stepping closer, circling the bed like a predator observing prey. "Now, endure." Lyra swallowed hard, settling onto the bed, keeping her posture rigid, trying to mask the storm of emotions inside her. Every nerve screamed as Caden approached. His presence overwhelming, oppressive, yet strangely magnetic. "You know," he said quietly, voice low, almost intimate, "there's more at stake tonight than you realize. That bloodline of yours. It carries a prophecy, a power that has lain dormant, waiting for the right omega to awaken it. And that omega is you." Lyra froze. Her mind spun. Prophecy. Power. She had always felt different, out of place, a current of energy that made her senses sharper, reactions faster, emotions deeper. Could it be true? Could she really be part of something so ancient, so dangerous? What does that mean?" she asked, voice trembling, curiosity mixing with fear. Caden leaned closer, his eyes locking onto hers with a piercing intensity that made her stomach twist. "It means, Omega, that tonight, you will either begin to embrace who you truly are or die trying. The choice is yours." Lyra's heart raced. The weight of destiny, of survival, of power pressed down on her. The night stretched ahead like a vast chasm, filled with unknowns, challenges, and dangers. Every instinct screamed for her to run, to escape, yet she remained, rooted in place by the gravity of Caden Storm's presence. A sudden noise, a shifting shadow from the corner of the room, made her flinch. Caden's hand shot out, steadying her by the shoulder. "Focus, Omega," he said sharply. Distractions will kill you. Lyra nodded, swallowing hard. Every fiber of her being was alert, senses tingling as she waited, anticipation coiling inside her like a spring. She had no idea what Caden planned next, and that uncertainty both terrified and intrigued her. He moved again, circling the bed, slow, deliberate, his gaze never leaving hers. "Tonight," he whispered, voice low, intimate, commanding, "you will learn what it truly means to be mine, and what it truly means to survive." The tension between them was suffocating, each breath a struggle, each heartbeat a drumbeat of impending danger. Lyra could feel the heat of his body near hers, the scent of him, rich, dark, intoxicating, filling her senses. Her omega instincts warred with her rational mind, urging her to resist, to flee, yet she couldn't deny the pull, the fire igniting in her chest. Hours seemed to stretch like an eternity. Caden's presence was constant, oppressive, and yet, strangely protective. Every movement, every word was a challenge, a test, a push against her limits. She began to notice subtle shifts in herself, a flare of power in her veins, a whisper of strength she hadn't known she possessed. "You're stronger than I anticipated," Caden said suddenly, voice low, almost approving. "That bloodline of yours. It's waking. And soon, Omega, you will understand why I chose you. Why I need you." Lyra's pulse quickened. She had no idea what he meant, and yet a flicker of something, trust, curiosity, began to grow. She clenched her fists, determined not to show weakness. "I'm surviving this night," she said firmly. "No matter what you do." Caden's lips curved into a slow, feral smile. "Good. I would expect nothing less from the Omega of prophecy." A sudden crash echoed from the outer hall, a reminder that danger was never far away. Lyra's heart leapt, adrenaline surging. Caden tensed beside her, his protective instincts flaring. "Stay here," he commanded. "No matter what happens, stay." Lyra nodded, chest tight, senses on fire. She had no idea what awaited them in the shadows, no idea what enemies lurked, what trials were yet to come. All she knew was this: she had accepted the Alpha's challenge. And survival, her survival, was only just beginning. As the first hours of the night stretched on, Lyra's senses sharpened, instincts heightened, and she began to understand the depth of the danger, the intensity of the attraction, and the inevitability of the prophecy that bound her to Caden's storm. Somewhere in the distance, a growl echoed, reminding her that the world outside was full of hunters, rivals, and secrets that could destroy her. She shivered, not from fear, but from anticipation. The night was far from over, and as the firelight flickered across Caden's imposing form, Lyra realized a terrifying truth. Surviving Caden Storm's bed was not merely a test of endurance. It was a trial of fire, of mind, of body, and of the heart. By the time the first hints of dawn began to creep across the cavern, Lyra knew one thing with absolute certainty. This night would change everything. Her fate, Caden's fate, and the prophecy that had been dormant for centuries were now intertwined. And she wasn't sure she was ready for what was coming next. Because some challenges weren't just about surviving. They were about transforming. And transformation was only just beginning. The cavern seemed endless, shadows dancing along the stone walls as Lyra's sky's pulse raced. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to escape Caden Storm's presence, to find safety in the night outside his lair. And yet she remained, seated on the vast bed, silk sheets cool against her skin, body taut with tension and apprehension. Caden stood near the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp, scanning her like a predator that had tasted its prey but hadn't yet decided to strike. His aura filled the room, commanding every inch of air, every heartbeat. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. "You're quiet," he said finally, voice low, carrying that dangerous edge that made her shiver. "Plotting your escape already." Lyra's jaw tightened. She forced a casual shrug, even as her pulse quickened. "I'm not plotting anything," she said, voice firm. "I'm just taking in my surroundings." Caden's lips twitched into a faint smirk. "Sure," he said, stepping closer. Each movement was slow, deliberate, a reminder of the dominance he exuded naturally. But I see it in your eyes. That little spark of defiance. That Omega stubbornness that refuses to submit, completely. Lyra met his gaze, refusing to look away. And you think you can intimidate me? She asked, though her voice trembled slightly. She hated the flutter of nerves in her chest, hated the way his presence made her senses alight. Caden leaned down slightly, eyes locking onto hers. Intimidation isn't necessary, Omega, he murmured. You'll survive. If you endure. If you resist too much, it'll hurt. Physically, mentally, emotionally. And you don't want that, do you? Lyra felt her body react despite herself. Her Omega instincts, primal and sharp, flared. The pull toward him, the magnetic tension, was impossible to ignore. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stand her ground. I endure. I always endure, she said, voice steady, though her pulse betrayed her. Caden's smirk widened. Good. I like a strong Omega. It makes things more interesting. He circled the bed, slow, deliberate, studying her every movement. Lyra could feel the heat from his body even as he kept his distance, each step calculated, each glance sharp and penetrating. It was as if he were testing her, teasing her, pushing her to see how much she could handle before breaking. You know, he said finally, lowering himself onto the edge of the bed, tonight isn't just about survival. It's about understanding, about learning who you are, and what you're capable of. Lyra frowned. And what exactly am I capable of? She asked, curiosity mixing with defiance. Caden's eyes darkened. More than you realize, Omega. More than anyone realizes. That bloodline of yours. That prophecy. It's not just words whispered in old tales. It's real. You're real. And what's coming, you'll either rise to it, or be consumed. The weight of his words pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. She wanted to question him, to demand answers, but even as she opened her mouth, he spoke again. His voice soft but commanding. Do you trust me? Lyra blinked. Her mind raced. Trust him. She barely knew him. He had thrown her into this dangerous challenge, demanded she survive the night in his bed under threat of death, and yet, a small, inexplicable pull stirred in her chest. I don't know, she admitted finally. Her voice was quiet, honest, betraying the swirl of fear, curiosity, and something she couldn't name. Caden leaned back, studying her with those piercing eyes. Good, he said. Doubt keeps you alive. But remember this, Omega. Tonight, doubt isn't your enemy. Desire is. And danger waits for those who underestimate it. Lyra's breath hitched. Desire. She hated herself for the way her body responded, for the flutter in her chest, for the pulse in her veins that screamed awareness of his dominance. She sat up straighter, trying to hide the reaction, though Caden seemed to notice every subtle shift. You're already testing me, she said, trying to regain control. Making me question everything. Why? Caden's smirk was faint, dangerous. Because, Omega, everything about tonight is a test. Every word. Every touch, every glance. And you are the challenge I've been waiting for. The firelight flickered, casting dancing shadows across the room. Lyra's eyes scanned the chamber, suddenly hyper-aware of the space around her. There was something in the air tonight, something more than Caden Storm's presence, something lurking, something dangerous. A chill ran down her spine, and she swallowed hard. Caden, do you feel that? She asked, voice low. Caden's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening. Yes, he murmured, standing abruptly. He moved to the window, scanning the darkness outside. We're not alone. Lyra's heart leapt into her throat. Not alone. The lair was supposed to be secure, protected by walls, wards, and Caden's own pack. And yet the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Someone or something was watching. Caden turned back to her, eyes blazing. Stay close, he commanded. If this night is about survival, then survival means vigilance. Do not let your guard down, Omega. Not even for a second. Lyra nodded, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow, every flicker of movement. She realized that Caden's challenge wasn't just about the night in his bed. It was about survival in every sense. Physical, emotional, mental. The hours dragged on, filled with verbal sparring, tension that crackled like lightning between them, and moments where attraction flared dangerously close to desire. Caden pushed her, provoked her, teased her, and yet he also revealed glimpses of his vulnerability, moments that hinted at the weight of his responsibilities as Alpha King. "I've carried this pack for years," he admitted one quiet moment, voice low, almost confessional. "Every decision, every battle. It's on my shoulders. I protect them even if it means sacrificing myself. Even if it means making enemies I cannot defeat alone." Lyra listened, heart aching slightly at the raw honesty in his tone. For a moment, Caden Storm, the ruthless Alpha King, seemed human, vulnerable. The tension between them deepened, no longer just about dominance. It was about trust, power, and the unspoken pull that neither of them could ignore. Then, a shadow moved across the doorway, subtle but deliberate. Lyra stiffened, eyes widening. Caden tensed immediately, instincts sharp, muscles coiled. "They're here," he said quietly, almost a growl. "Someone wants you, Omega. Someone powerful, dangerous. And they won't stop until they get what they want." Fear surged through Lyra, but so did determination. She had survived too long, fought too hard to be taken now. She squared her shoulders, meeting Caden's gaze. "Then we fight," she said firmly. Caden's eyes glinted, approving, dangerous. "Yes, we fight. Together. But remember this, Omega. This night. It's only the beginning. There's a storm coming, and it will test everything about you. Your strength, your instincts, your heart, and most importantly, your destiny." Lyra felt a shiver of anticipation. The tension in the room was almost unbearable, a mix of fear, desire, and the electric undercurrent of danger. Every instinct screamed at her to stay alert, to survive, to endure. And yet, another stranger instinct whispered that Caden Storm wasn't just a threat. He was something more. Something she couldn't resist. The night stretched on, filled with whispered warnings, glances that burned, and words that teased, provoked, and challenged. Caden revealed more of his past, stories of battles, betrayals, and the weight of leadership, each tale making Lyra understand him a little more, even as it made her pulse quicken. "You've never known a life like mine," he murmured, voice low, almost intimate. "Every choice I've made, every enemy I've faced, every risk I've taken, it's brought me here. To you. To this night." Lyra's heart skipped. She hated the way his words affected her. Hated the shiver that ran through her body. Hated the magnetic pull of his dominance. And yet, she couldn't deny it. She couldn't ignore the tension, the desire, the inexplicable bond that simmered just beneath the surface. Then, from the corner of the room, movement. A figure cloaked in shadows, silent, deliberate. Lyra's breath caught. Caden's senses flared instantly. "They're coming," he growled, a low, dangerous rumble. "Prepare yourself, Omega. Survival isn't just about enduring the night. It's about surviving what's out there." Lyra nodded, chest tight, mind racing. She had no idea what awaited them, no idea what danger lurked in the shadows. All she knew was that the night was far from over, and every second brought a new challenge, a new spark of tension, a new test of endurance. And as Caden stepped closer, protective, dominant, and utterly magnetic, Lyra realized the truth. Surviving the night wasn't just a test of her body or mind. It was a test of heart, of instinct, of desire, and of a destiny she was only beginning to understand. The shadow moved again, and the night deepened. And the real test was about to begin. The first rays of dawn had barely begun to pierce the cavern when Lyra Skye awoke, still tangled in the silk sheets of Caden Storm's vast bed. The night had been a blur of tension, tests, and unspoken words that had left her body aching in ways she didn't fully understand. She blinked against the dim light, her mind still racing with the memories of the previous night. The verbal sparring, the sparks of desire, the magnetic dominance of the Alpha King who seemed to command her very breath. Her pulse thudded in her ears, each beat reminding her that something had shifted within her. She could feel it deep inside, an invisible thread pulling her toward Caden, weaving around her heart, tugging at her senses. It wasn't just attraction. It was something older, stronger, primal. A fated pull she couldn't explain, a connection she hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. Caden was already awake, seated at the edge of the bed with his hands clasped between his knees, eyes dark and intense as they studied her. There was a tension in his posture, a subtle unease she hadn't seen before. His alpha dominance radiated as always, commanding the space, yet there was a flicker of something deeper in his gaze, something personal, something unguarded. "You're awake," he said softly, voice low but carrying that familiar edge that made her spine tighten. Lyra sat up, curling the sheets around her body instinctively. "I am," she replied, trying to mask the flutter of nerves she felt every time their eyes met. "Why are you sitting there like a statue?" Caden's lips curved into a faint, controlled smile, but his eyes never left hers. "Because Omega," he said, voice smooth but charged. "I've been awake longer than you, and I've been watching, waiting to see how you'd react." Lyra's brows knit together. "Watching me?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her tone. "You've had me in your bed all night. Were you assessing me?" Caden leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. "Of course," he murmured. "It's part of the challenge. Survival isn't just about withstanding my presence. It's about understanding it, controlling it, mastering it, and perhaps learning a little about yourself in the process." Lyra swallowed hard. The words struck something deep inside her, stirring a mix of irritation and something she refused to name. She had survived his bed, yes, but the night's challenges weren't over. This pull, the one she felt, the one she couldn't resist, made her pulse quicken, made her mind race with confusion and tension. "Control?" she asked, tone wary. "Are you saying I need to master you?" Caden's eyes darkened, flickers of something dangerous and unguarded passing through them. "No," he said softly, but each word was heavy with intensity. "You need to master yourself. Your instincts, your desires. Your bond with me. That bond is stronger than you realize, Omega. It's primal, inescapable. And it will grow if you survive this night. If you endure." Lyra's chest tightened. The words were intoxicating, terrifying, and undeniable. Her Omega instincts flared in response, heart racing, senses sharpening. Every brush of his gaze, every subtle movement, seemed to tug at something deep within her, something she didn't fully understand but couldn't ignore. "What bond?" she asked, almost whispering. Caden leaned closer, the air between them thick with tension. "The bond that ties mates," he said, voice low, deliberate. "Fated mates. The kind of bond that doesn't fade, doesn't break, doesn't care about time or circumstance. I didn't choose this. But the moment I sensed it, Omega, I knew. You are mine as much as I am yours. And resisting it will only make it stronger." Lyra's stomach twisted. Fated mates. She had heard the stories, the old legends whispered among packs. How once a bond was formed, it was unbreakable, binding two souls across time and space. And now, the weight of it pressed down on her chest, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. She took a shaky breath, trying to push down the flood of feelings rising inside her. I don't know if I can." Caden's hand brushed against hers, stopping her words. His touch was brief, yet it ignited something within her, a spark that roared into flames across every nerve ending. "You don't have to decide yet," he murmured, voice soft but charged. "But you will feel it. The bond. It's already waking." Lyra's eyes widened. The truth of his words resonated deep within her. She felt it, The pull, the magnetism, the undeniable force drawing her closer to Caden's storm. Her instincts screamed warning and anticipation simultaneously, the duality of fear and desire impossible to ignore. For a long moment neither spoke, each lost in the intensity of the other. And then Caden shifted slightly, tension in his shoulders easing, though his gaze remained locked on hers. "You're stronger than I expected," he said quietly, almost contemplatively. "Not just physically, Omega, mentally, emotionally. Most would have broken under the pressure of this night, and yet here you are, alive, alert, still defiant, still fascinating." Lyra's cheeks flushed. She hated the way his words affected her, hated the heat that flared in her chest, hated the flutter of nerves and emotions she couldn't control. And yet, she couldn't deny it. She was drawn to him, pulled toward him in ways she didn't fully understand but could feel in every fiber of her being. "You're making it very hard to hate you," she muttered, a faint smirk curving her lips despite the tension. Caden's eyes sparkled with a dangerous amusement. "That's the point, Omega," he said softly. "You will never hate what you need, what you are destined for, what you cannot resist." Lyra swallowed hard. The pull between them deepened, drawing her closer, even as caution and fear screamed in her mind. She had survived the physical challenge of the night, but now, the emotional, psychic, and spiritual challenge had begun. She could feel the bond stirring, waking, and the intensity was overwhelming. And yet, she wasn't ready to give in. Not completely. Not yet. As if sensing her hesitation, Caden shifted, moving to stand near the bed. His presence magnetic, overwhelming, and impossibly commanding. He studied her, expression unreadable, as though measuring her very soul. "Your instincts are strong, Omega," he murmured, voice low. "But instincts alone won't protect you tonight. You need awareness, vigilance, control. There are threats here you cannot see. Enemies who would kill you simply to harness your power." Lyra's stomach twisted. "Enemies?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Caden's eyes narrowed, the intensity in his gaze sharpening. "Yes," he said quietly. "There are forces within my pack, and beyond it, who would take you for themselves. I do not know their full strength or intent, but I know this. They are dangerous and they are patient. You must be ready for anything." The weight of his words pressed down on her chest. She had survived the night physically, but now the emotional and psychological trials began. Every word, every glance, every subtle touch from Caden heightened her senses, sharpened her instincts, and deepened the bond she could not deny. Lyra took a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. I'll be ready," she said firmly, though the flutter in her chest betrayed her. I have to be." Caden studied her, eyes dark and unreadable, then slowly, deliberately. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was gentle, intimate, and yet charged with dominance, a reminder of his presence, his power, and the pull between them. "You are mine, Omega," he whispered, voice low, almost reverent. "Whether you resist or accept it, you belong to this bond. And soon you will understand just how deep it runs." Lyra's heart raced. She wanted to argue, to resist, to push him away, but she couldn't. The bond tugged at her, a force she could neither fight nor escape. It was frightening, exhilarating, and intoxicating all at once. Suddenly, a subtle shift in the air, a flicker of movement at the edge of her vision, made her freeze. Caden's head snapped toward the shadows, senses flaring instantly. "They're here," he murmured, a low growl rumbling from his chest. "Someone is moving within my pack. Watching. Waiting. And they are not friendly." Lyra's pulse spiked. Her instincts screamed at her, the fated bond thrumming with awareness. The danger was closer than they had imagined, and it wasn't just external, it was internal. Someone within Caden's walls sought her, or the power she carried, for dark purposes. Caden stepped closer, protective and commanding. "Stay close," he ordered, voice low but sharp. "No matter what happens, trust the bond. It will guide you. It will keep you alive." Lyra nodded, chest tight, senses on high alert. She could feel the bond pulsing, a tether of awareness and instinct connecting her to Caden. It was terrifying and comforting at once, a reminder that survival now depended not just on her strength, but on their connection. And as shadows shifted in the corners of the room, Lyra realized a chilling truth. The night had only just begun. The fated bond had awakened, but danger lurked closer than either of them realized. And survival would demand more than either of them had anticipated. The wind outside Caden's storm's lair howled like a restless wolf, rattling the tall, iron-barred windows. Inside, the flickering firelight cast long, twisting shadows across the stone walls, dancing in rhythm with the tension that thickened the air. Lyra Skye sat on the edge of the bed, her hands pressed tightly against her knees, her eyes scanning the dimly lit room. Every instinct in her Omega body screamed at her that danger was near, but Caden remained calm, unervingly so, as if he could sense every shadow that moved in the darkness. "You're tense," Caden said, his voice low and commanding, the kind that made you sit up straighter even if you wanted to defy him. He moved closer, his boots making no sound on the stone floor, a predator in his own right. "I don't blame you. Not everyone survives a night in my bed without consequences." Lyra swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Consequences like what?" Her voice trembled just enough to betray her fear, but she forced the edge of defiance into her tone. Caden's lips curved into a half-smile, dangerous and unreadable. "Consequences like learning the hard way that the world isn't as simple as you thought, that your bloodline carries weight you never imagined, and that not everyone who wants you means well." Lyra's pulse quickened. The words carried a double meaning, and the memory of the previous night's tension, the near brush of his hand, the lingering closeness, made her stomach twist. Her Omega senses were on high alert, but so was her heart, even as she tried to deny it. Before she could respond, the door to Caden's private chambers slammed open with a violent force. The sound made her jump, her hair brushing against her cheeks as she turned sharply. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, and dangerous. Lyra felt the instinctive pull of fear, the kind that warned her of an alpha's presence outside of Caden's control. Caden's expression hardened instantly. "Get back," he commanded, his voice a growl that made the intruder pause mid-step. "This is my territory." The stranger's lips twisted into a smirk, arrogance radiating from his stance. "Storm," he said, as if merely speaking Caden's name was enough to provoke him. "Still hiding behind your walls, still pretending to be untouchable, and still, with an Omega that isn't yours." Lyra's breath caught. Who is that?" Caden's jaw clenched and his amber eyes, usually smoldering with dominance, now burned with raw fury. "A rival. Someone who thinks they can challenge me, and take what is mine." The intruder laughed, a sound that scraped against the edges of Lyra's nerves. "You think your little game will protect her? She's more than just your pawn, Storm. You don't even know what you're dealing with." Caden's claws flexed inside his fists, barely restrained. "Step any closer, and you won't get a chance to finish that sentence." Lyra felt herself shrink back, both in fear and in instinct. But beneath it, something deeper stirred. She could feel it, a pulse of power she hadn't felt before, one that seemed to respond to Caden's presence, and perhaps even the intruder's challenge. Her hands tingled, and the room seemed to hum with energy. Caden's gaze softened slightly when he looked at her. "Lyra, stay close. And trust me." Lyra's Omega instincts screamed both warning and something else, something urgent, compelling her to listen. She nodded, unable to speak, and Caden moved with lethal precision, placing himself between her and the intruder. The stranger's eyes narrowed. "So, the Alpha's mate has awakened some potential. Interesting. Perhaps this will be fun." "Fun?" Caden barked a laugh, dark and sharp. "You think this is a game?" Before the stranger could reply, Caden's pack emerged from the shadows, their growls low and menacing. Wolves, both human and feral in their hybrid forms, encircled the intruder. Lyra's heart thudded wildly. This was more than a simple threat. This was war, a warning, and a test all rolled into one. The intruder raised his hands, eyes flickering with recognition and something darker. So, the prophecy is real. You really did find her. Lyra froze. Caden's expression darkened at the word. Prophecy, he growled. You dare speak of it in my presence? Yes, the rival sneered. And soon, the world will see why your alpha reigns are nothing compared to what she can bring. You think she's just an omega, but she carries a legacy that will shift power across packs. If you let her live. Lyra's pulse raced. A legacy. Prophecy. Her mind spun with possibilities. What did they mean? Why was she so important? She had always known her family was different, but she never imagined this. Caden's voice was low, tight with anger. Lyra, do you understand what he's saying? Lyra shook her head slowly, too overwhelmed to speak. You will, Caden said softly, almost to himself, before turning back to the rival. And when you do, you'll regret ever crossing me. The intruder's smirk widened. I look forward to it. And with a flash, he disappeared into the night, leaving behind only a faint trace of shadows that seemed to slither along the walls. Lyra sagged against Caden, the adrenaline of fear and confusion leaving her dizzy. He's going to come back, isn't he? Caden's hand found her shoulder, firm, grounding. Yes, and we need to be ready. There are forces gathering, forces that want you for reasons neither of us can ignore. Your bloodline, it carries power. Power that others will kill for. Lyra's mind raced, trying to process everything. Prophecy. Bloodline. Caden's unwavering protection. Her body buzzed with an energy she didn't understand, yet instinctively trusted. Caden's eyes softened as he looked down at her. Lyra, I know this is overwhelming. I know you don't understand. But you need to learn to trust me even when you don't see the path ahead. You are more important than you realize. I won't let anyone take you from me. Lyra's chest tightened. Part of her wanted to collapse into his arms, to let go of all fear. But another part, the wary Omega, held back. I don't know if I can trust anyone, she whispered. Caden's gaze hardened, a flash of the Alpha King returning. You will. Or you will die trying. The firelight flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Lyra could feel the weight of the night pressing down, a night that was far from over. There were dangers lurking, enemies hidden in the darkness, and a prophecy that bound her to a fate she hadn't yet begun to understand. Suddenly, a sound shattered the tense quiet, a soft, almost inaudible whisper that seemed to come from nowhere. Lyra! She froze. Her Omega senses flared. Something was close. Too close. Caden's eyes snapped toward her, alert and sharp. Did you hear that? Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, it's him. Or something else. Before either could react, a shadow moved across the far wall. A figure, dark and fast, lunged toward them with blinding speed. Caden roared, intercepting the attack, and Lyra felt herself lifted and pulled behind him as claws and fangs met flesh and stone. The struggle was brief but brutal. Caden's power was immense, but so was the determination of the intruder. Lyra felt the room tilt, her senses spinning as the fight unfolded like a storm. Sparks flew, a shard of broken furniture cut across the room, and Lyra's Omega instincts screamed at her to run, but she couldn't. Not when Caden's presence was an anchor she couldn't let go of. Finally, the intruder staggered back, retreating into the shadows with a furious growl. This isn't over, Storm. She will be mine. And when she is, you will regret standing in my way. Lyra's knees buckled, and Caden caught her, holding her close. His chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, his amber eyes scanning the shadows, unyielding and protective. You're safe for now, he said quietly. But they're coming. And next time they won't be so careless. Lyra shivered, the weight of the night settling heavily on her shoulders. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. "I don't even know what I'm supposed to do." Caden brushed a stray lock of hair from her face, his touch gentle yet commanding. "You'll learn. You have to. Because they will come for you, and if you can't control what's inside you, it could destroy everything." Lyra looked up at him, her heart a mix of fear and longing, confusion and awakening power. She realized that she was not just an Omega anymore. She was something more. Something dangerous. Something that even Caden couldn't fully control. And she knew deep down that surviving tonight was only the beginning. The fire crackled, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the promise of battles yet to come. Lyra swallowed hard. She was ready, or she would have to be, because the hidden enemy was out there, waiting, watching, and they were coming for her. And Caden. Caden Storm would be the only one standing between her and certain death. The night was far from over, and the storm had only just begun. The moon hung low over the Silver Pine Valley, casting long, sinister shadows across the pack gathering. Caden Storm, the Alpha King whose name alone made lesser beings tremble, stood at the head of the circle. His piercing silver eyes scanned the crowd, sharp as blades. Lyra Skye followed cautiously, heart thumping in rhythm with the anticipation that filled the night air. She had accepted his challenge, had spent nights wrapped in his presence, feeling the tug of a bond that whispered of fated mates. But tonight the tension was different. He wasn't the only one with secrets. Caden's jaw clenched as he greeted the elders. "We're gathered tonight to discuss alliances, threats, and the protection of our territories," he said, voice deep and commanding. His words held weight, demanding attention. Lyra's gaze wandered, catching faces of pack members she barely trusted. Something felt off. A subtle shift, a whisper, a glance too quick, too calculating. She didn't know who, but someone here was hiding something. Caden leaned close, his breath brushing her ear, a dangerous intimacy that made her pulse spike. "Stay close," he murmured. "Eyes and ears everywhere tonight. Not everyone is who they seem." Lyra nodded, though her mind raced. She wanted to trust him, to feel safe under his shadow, yet suspicion gnawed at her. She remembered the rumors whispered in the village, the stories of alphas turning on their own, the ones who craved power so much they'd betray their own blood. Could it be true for Caden? Or worse, someone close to him? The gathering progressed, voices echoing in the stone hall, discussions of territories, hunts, and alliances. Caden's words were sharp, precise, cutting through lies and deceit. But even as he spoke, Lyra felt the pull of her own power, latent and simmering beneath her skin. She could sense shifts, detect hidden tension, shadows that clung to certain individuals. Her bloodline had always carried a mark, an unspoken secret, but until now she hadn't understood the full extent of its reach. As the council concluded, Caden dismissed the elders, leaving only the inner circle. Lyra's heart tightened. She knew this was where the real danger lay. Faces she had begun to trust suddenly felt foreign. Whispers in the corners of the hall, glances exchanged behind folded arms. They spoke of schemes, plots, something dark threading through the room. Caden's hand brushed against hers briefly, a grounding, intimate connection that reminded her why she had stayed. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Her instincts screamed danger, and she trusted them more than she trusted words tonight. He narrowed his eyes. "I know," he admitted. "I've suspected for some time, but the traitor is clever. We'll find them." Lyra felt the weight of his words, the tension coiling around them like a serpent ready to strike. She wanted to ask who, wanted to confront him, but the danger in the hall held them both hostage. It was then that she felt it, a sudden, sharp pull, an unseen hand gripping her essence. Before she could react, strong arms surged from the shadows, and the world tilted. "Lyra!" Caden's roar shattered the hall, echoing off stone walls, but it was too late. The hands dragged her away, swift and merciless. She fought, claws sinking into flesh, teeth gnashing, but the force was overwhelming. Darkness swallowed her. She landed in a cold, damp space, chained and trapped, her breath ragged, pulse racing. Panic threatened to consume her, but beneath it, something stirred. Her bloodline. It pulsed, humming, whispering secrets she was only beginning to understand. The power inside her throbbed, reacting to the threat. She had survived nights of tension, nights of doubt, but now in the dark she felt the first taste of true terror. And it was intoxicating. Caden's voice called out, distant but full of fury. "Lyra, hold on, I will find you." Her captor didn't respond. A shadowy figure, cloaked and silent, circled her, examining, assessing. The figure spoke finally, voice dripping with malice, reverberating through the stone chamber. "The Alpha doesn't know. He will fall, and so will his precious Omega. Your power will be mine, little wolf." Lyra felt the words like ice through her veins. She was not just a pawn. She was a prize, a key, a weapon. And now, every skill, every ounce of power she had, every secret she had yet to uncover, would be tested to its limit. She could feel Caden searching, and in that desperate hope, a flame ignited. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time had no meaning in the shadows. The chains bit into her wrists, the cold seeped into her bones, but she forced herself to focus. Prophecy. Her bloodline. The pull toward Caden. Everything converged in a single, desperate thought. Survive. She would not be broken. She would not be taken without a fight. And then, a whisper in the darkness, close to her ear. A voice she did not recognize, yet it sent chills down her spine. "The Alpha will pay for his mistakes, and the Omega will suffer." The chains rattled as Lyra tested them, her mind racing. She was not helpless. She was never helpless. Her hands glowed faintly, the hidden power within her responding to her fear and anger. A spark, a flicker of something that could change everything. Somewhere beyond the darkness, she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, calculated. Her instincts screamed Caden, but her mind knew better. The figure approaching did not belong to him. Not this one. This was the traitor, the betrayer, the shadow she had sensed all along. And then, the final thought before the chapter closed, before the world of darkness became unbearable. Caden Storm, the Alpha King, her fated mate, was not here. And if he didn't arrive soon, everything they had built, every fragile trust, every flicker of desire and connection would burn. Lyra's heartbeat thundered, a mix of fear and fury. She would survive. She had to. Because if she didn't, nothing would ever be the same. The night was heavy with mist, curling around the edges of the forest like ghostly fingers. Caden Storm moved through it like a shadow himself, silent, lethal, and unwavering. Every sense was heightened, every instinct screaming danger, yet guiding him forward. He wasn't just hunting enemies tonight. He was hunting for Lyra Skye, the Omega who had become more than a mere pawn in this deadly game. She was part of him now, whether he admitted it or not. Lyra's mind raced as she crouched in the corner of the damp cell, the cold stone floor pressing against her skin. Her wrists throbbed from the restraints, but pain had become a background noise. She had to stay alert. One wrong move, one misstep, and the shadowy figures who held her here would have no mercy. Her heart beat not only from fear but from a strange, unfamiliar connection that had been growing since the night she'd been thrown into Caden's bed. That pull, the fated bond, was stronger now, urging her to focus, to survive. She didn't know why, but she could feel his presence even miles away. The bond hummed like electricity through her veins, whispering, "He's coming. Trust him." Somewhere in the darkness beyond the cell, she sensed movement. Whispers, footsteps, low growls. Whoever had captured her wasn't just strong. They were organized, dangerous. But Lyra was no ordinary Omega. Her bloodline thrummed with an energy she hadn't yet fully understood. It was time to tap into it. "Focus, Lyra," she whispered to herself. "You've survived worse. You'll survive this." Meanwhile, Caden's mind was a storm of strategy and fury. Every moment without her fueled his rage, but he forced himself to think, to plan. He could feel the bond too, an invisible tether that pulled at him with each heartbeat. I will not lose her. Not to them, not to anyone. He slowed, crouching low behind the thick underbrush as his pack fanned out around him. Silent discipline, deadly. Each alpha and beta under his command trusted his instincts implicitly. Caden's gaze scanned the perimeter, his mind reading the forest like it had become a living map. Then he caught it, a flicker of shadow movement, too calculated to be the wind. Lyra's close, he muttered almost to himself. His voice carried the weight of command and an underlying threat. Step in my way and you die. The pack advanced, a well-oiled hunting machine, but Caden moved ahead, alone, relying on his speed and the bond guiding him. He could feel her fear, her fight, her determination. And beneath it all, the subtle thread of longing that made his chest tighten. Inside the cell, Lyra focused on her pulse, on the raw energy simmering in her hands. It wasn't much, not yet, but it was enough to feel the air around the door shift when the first key turned in the lock. Her captor stepped in, a tall, cruel alpha from the rival pack, eyes glinting with triumph. You've caused quite the stir, little Omega, he sneered. But your king won't save you this time. Lyra's hands crackled faintly with her awakening power. The energy was unpredictable, dangerous, yet undeniably hers. She raised them, fingers trembling but fierce. Try me, she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear. The man laughed, advancing toward her. And then, a roar tore through the air, so pure and raw it made the walls of the cell shake. The door burst open, splinters flying, and Caden Storm stood there, an unstoppable force of anger and power, eyes blazing, fangs glinting in the dim torchlight. The rival alpha froze, uncertainty flashing across his face. Caden didn't hesitate. He lunged, a blur of muscle and precision, taking the enemy down with a calculated ferocity that left the remaining guards scrambling. Lyra's heart pounded, not just from fear but from awe. Even now, even in the chaos, Caden exuded a magnetism, a raw dominance that made the hairs on her arms rise. But she had no time for distraction. She needed to get free. With a surge of her energy, she focused it on the restraints, feeling the bonds buckle under the force of her awakening power. Lyra, Caden called, his voice carrying both command and relief. She didn't hesitate. Together, they fought their way through the maze of guards, moving like a storm tearing through the enemy stronghold. Every step was a test of trust and timing. Lyra had never felt more alive, or more terrified. And yet, with Caden by her side, the fear was tempered by a fierce, burning need to survive together. As they neared the exit, a sharp whistle cut through the night air. Reinforcements. Dozens of dark figures emerged from the shadows, encircling them. Caden's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing into slits. He knew he couldn't fight them all, not alone. But he wouldn't leave her behind. Lyra, listen, he barked. Trust me, follow my lead. They moved as one, instinct synchronizing. Lyra could feel his heartbeat, steady and commanding, guiding her through the chaos. The bond pulsed stronger with every brush of skin, every shared glance, and every step that took them closer to freedom. And then the unthinkable happened. A blade, quick, silent, deadly, slashed toward Caden's side. He barely had time to react, twisting just enough to avoid a fatal strike. Pain seared along his ribs, and for the first time in years, Caden Storm tasted the sting of vulnerability. Lyra's eyes widened in terror, the bond flaring violently as it connected them. Well, not him. The energy in her hands exploded outward, sending several enemies sprawling. The moment of chaos gave them a narrow path to escape, but Caden stumbled, blood trickling down his side, teeth gritted in defiance. Caden! Lyra screamed, rushing to him, but he shoved her gently back. Go. Get out of here. I'll hold them. No, she yelled, refusing to leave him behind. Her power surged again, stronger, more controlled, weaving around Caden like protective armor. Together, they became a force that even the rival pack couldn't withstand. The night air was thick with smoke and the scent of fear. Each heartbeat was a countdown, each breath a stolen moment. And as they finally broke into the open forest, free from immediate danger, Caden pressed a hand to his side, gritting his teeth. "You've grown stronger," he muttered, almost to himself, voice low but filled with a mix of awe and warning. "And I can't control this anymore." Lyra looked up at him, her own breath ragged. "Neither can I," she admitted, the bond blazing between them like fire and lightning intertwined. But even in the brief calm, both knew the danger wasn't over. This rescue had only revealed how powerful their enemies were, how vulnerable they still were, and how deep the prophecies reach truly extended. Caden's gaze softened for the briefest moment, but then hardened again, Alpha and Protector merging into one. "Rest, Lyra. We fight again at dawn. And next time, I won't hold back." Lyra nodded, heart pounding not just from fear but from desire, from the knowledge that they were no longer just Alpha and Omega. They were something more. Something bound by fate, fire, and the unspoken promise of survival. And somewhere in the shadows, the true enemy watched, waiting, smiling. They had underestimated Lyra and Caden. But soon the game would escalate. And the Alpha Storm's fury would meet the Omega Sky's awakening power in a storm the world had never seen. The night had been survived. But the war was only beginning. The forest was alive with whispers, shadows moving as though they had their own purpose. Lyra Skye crouched behind a gnarled oak, every nerve screaming at her that danger wasn't just near. It was inevitable. The scent of wet earth and fallen leaves mixed with a metallic tang of blood. Her captors had underestimated her, but she had survived. And now, survival meant more than just breathing. It meant uncovering the truth. Caden Storm moved silently through the undergrowth, his eyes like twin storms of fury and calculation. He was Alpha, King, Predator, but tonight he was something else. Vulnerable, determined, and unmistakably drawn to her. "You can't keep doing this, Lyra," he said, voice low, carrying the weight of command and the pull of something unspoken. "You can't fight me and yourself at the same time." Lyra's breath hitched. The words weren't just about obedience. They were about the magnetic force that had been growing between them. Irresistible, dangerous, forbidden. "I'm not yours," she said sharply, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Caden's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly, before hardening again. "You're mine if we survive tonight," he murmured, eyes darting toward a flicker of movement in the shadows. "And you'll see soon enough why." They pressed forward, every step a delicate balance between predator and prey. The night air hummed with tension, alive with the scent of wild animals, and the scent of Lyra's own awakening power. She felt it coiling in her chest, thrumming through her veins, igniting every fiber of her being. It whispered of destiny, of fates intertwined. A rustle behind them made them both freeze. Lyra's pulse spiked. She caught a glimpse of movement, a figure stepping out from the shadows, tall, lean, dangerous. Caden growled, a low, menacing sound that vibrated through the air. "Lyra," he hissed. "Stay close. No mistakes." The figure stopped, and a familiar voice sliced through the night. "Caden, and the Omega." Lyra's stomach dropped. It was someone they hadn't expected. Eric's, a former member of Caden's inner circle, exiled for reasons Caden had never fully revealed. His eyes gleamed with something dark and untrustworthy, and Lyra felt an icy warning settle in her bones. "Eric's," Caden said cautiously. "What are you doing here?" Eric smirked, stepping closer, every movement calculated. "You need me more than you realize. You can't fight what's coming alone." Lyra wanted to step back, to run, to scream, but Caden's presence anchored her. She could feel the pull between them, magnetic and electric. "Why should we trust you?" Caden demanded, his voice sharp as the blade at his side. "Because," Eric said, leaning casually against a tree, "the prophecy isn't just about the two of you. It's bigger than your petty alpha wars. Bigger than your feelings. And if you want to survive, you'll need someone who knows the rules you can't even begin to comprehend." Lyra's pulse hammered in her ears. The word prophecy made her stomach churn. Everything had been leading to this, every choice, every danger, every spark of fear and desire. She swallowed hard. "And if we don't trust you?" she asked, voice trembling but defiant. Eric's smirk faded into something sharper. "Then one of you dies. And I'm not talking about a small consequence. I'm talking about the kind of death that haunts the pack for generations." Caden's hands clenched, jaw tight. "We make no alliances with traitors." Eric's laugh was low, almost mocking. "I'm not your enemy, Caden. But your pride could get you killed." Lyra felt the weight of the moment settle over her. They were trapped between danger and desperation, and the lines of loyalty and survival blurred. She glanced at Caden, saw the storm raging in his eyes, and understood they had no choice. Not if they wanted to survive the night. "Fine," Caden said finally, voice tight with tension. "We'll work with you. But one false move." His eyes burned into Eric's, and the air seemed to crackle with promise of violence. "And I'll kill you where you stand." Eric's grin returned, more enigmatic than ever. "I expected nothing less, Alpha." As they moved deeper into the forest, Lyra couldn't ignore the pull between herself and Caden. It was dangerous, reckless, and impossible to resist. Every glance, every brush of skin, every shared heartbeat seemed to ignite something primal in her. She felt the bond awakening, raw and undeniable, and she couldn't tell if it terrified her more than the threats lurking in the shadows. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning here, only tension, only anticipation. Lyra and Caden moved as one, sometimes stepping on unspoken boundaries, their hands brushing, their breaths mingling, sparks flying in every glance. It was intoxicating and infuriating all at once. And then they found it. A clearing, moonlight spilling over the ground, revealing a hidden camp. Wolves prowled the edges, eyes glowing like embers. Lyra's heart thudded violently in her chest. Danger was close. Too close. "This is it," Eric's whispered. "The place where the prophecy will reveal itself, or where it will end you." Caden's muscles tensed. "Stay behind me," he commanded. "No mistakes." But Lyra stepped forward, drawn by a force she couldn't explain. Her pulse raced, power awakening, energy thrumming through her. She could feel the prophecy, ancient and waiting, brushing against her soul. And she knew it would demand sacrifices, choices, and truths she wasn't ready to face. Suddenly the shadows shifted. Movement on the edges of the clearing. Lyra froze, heart in her throat. A pack of unknown figures emerged, their eyes cold, calculating, their intentions clear. Caden growled, muscles coiling like a predator ready to strike. "We're not alone," he growled. "Prepare yourselves." Lyra felt a surge of fear, but also of power. She glanced at Caden, saw the unspoken plea in his eyes, the bond tightening between them. She knew in that instant that their fate was intertwined. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal waiting in the dark, ready to strike when they least expected it. Eric stepped forward, hands raised. "I warned you. This is bigger than either of you imagined." And then, in the blink of an eye, chaos erupted. Shadows lunged, claws flashed, teeth bared. Lyra's power ignited, a fierce, blinding energy radiating from her. But even that might not be enough. Caden roared, leaping into the fray, fangs bared, eyes blazing with fury. Together they fought, not just for survival, but for something deeper, something raw and undeniable that neither of them could name yet. And in the middle of the battle, a chilling realization hit Lyra like ice to her veins. Someone had betrayed them. Someone close. Someone she had trusted. Her breath caught, heart hammering, as she locked eyes with the traitor. Time seemed to slow. And then, before she could react, a shadow moved, and everything went black. The rain fell in heavy sheets, hammering the forest floor as if the sky itself were waging war. Each drop stung Lyra's skin, but she hardly noticed. Her senses were sharp, alive, tracking every movement in the darkness around them. Shadows danced violently between the trees, and she could feel the tension of Caden's pack like a living heartbeat beneath her own. The air was thick with anticipation, blood, and the metallic tang of fear. Caden stood ahead, shoulders squared, the aura of alpha dominance radiating off him in waves. His eyes were storm gray, fierce and unrelenting, scanning every inch of the clearing ahead. "Everyone knows their position," he said, voice low but firm. "We move as one. No hesitation. Protect each other, and we survive." Lyra's stomach knotted. She had trained with Caden, watched him in battle before, but this felt different. Tonight was more than survival. It was destiny manifesting itself. She clenched her fists, feeling the faint pulse of energy simmering beneath her skin. Her hidden powers whispered, a call she could neither deny nor fully control. From the shadows, the rival pack emerged, moving with precision and deadly intent. Their snarls and growls echoed through the trees, sending shivers down Lyra's spine. Caden's gaze met hers briefly, and in that fleeting moment, the world narrowed down to just the two of them. Desire, fear, and trust collided in an invisible knot that tied her to him. The first clash came suddenly. Wolves lunged from the tree-line, fangs bared, claws slashing. Caden moved like liquid steel, his strikes precise, lethal. Every blow he delivered was calculated, yet instinctive, a brutal dance perfected through countless battles. Lyra followed his lead, weaving between friend and foe, her own energy glowing faintly as it reacted to her heightened emotions. Then it happened. An enemy lunged directly at Caden, and without thinking, Lyra reached out. Her hands ignited in a golden blaze, the raw force of her untrained power erupting with a roar she hadn't intended. It was beautiful and terrifying, illuminating the night like twin suns. For a moment everything froze. Enemy combatants faltered, shielding their eyes from the brilliance. Lyra felt a surge of pride and fear. She was powerful, more than she had ever realized. But control eluded her. Caden stumbled back, knocked off balance by the blast. Time slowed as Lyra watched him crash to the ground, blood streaking his face. Her heart seized. "Caden!" she screamed, rushing to him despite the chaos raging around her. Every instinct screamed at her to pull him away from danger, but she could feel the fire within her trembling, unstable. He looked up at her, eyes half-lidded, pain and anger flashing in equal measure. You have to control it," he gasped, voice strained. "Power without control destroys everything." Lyra's chest heaved as fear and guilt collided with something far deeper, something that made her pulse thunder and her body ache with forbidden desire. She couldn't deny it anymore. Caden's nearness, the brush of his bloodied skin against her hands, the raw intensity in his gaze. It ignited something primal in her. But there was no time for longing. From the shadows, the enemy leader stepped forward, tall and menacing, fangs gleaming. His eyes were cold, calculating. "You cannot protect him forever, little Omega," he hissed. "Your power is a curse as much as it is a gift. One wrong move, and everything burns." Lyra felt the weight of the prophecy pressing down on her shoulders. Every vision, every whisper she had endured since discovering her hidden lineage had led to this moment. The destiny of Caden, the pack, and herself hung by a fragile thread. Caden gritted his teeth and rose, staggering but resolute. "Stay with me," he barked, grabbing her hands in his. "We face this together. No hesitation, no fear." Pain laced his voice, yet there was unwavering strength beneath it. Lyra's stomach fluttered with conflicting emotions, fear, love, anger, and desire, all mixing in a potent storm. A sudden lightning strike split the sky, illuminating the battlefield and throwing the enemy into stark relief. The rival pack attacked with renewed ferocity, claws and fangs slicing through the night air. Caden's pack met them head-on, a symphony of growls, snarls, and violent collisions. Lyra's power flared again, responding to her emotions. Flames of energy wrapped around her fists, her heart racing, burning through fear and doubt. And then the betrayal came. From within Caden's ranks, A figure moved with suspicious precision, their actions disrupting the pack's formation. Lyra's mind raced. Someone she trusted, someone close to Caden, had turned against them. Anger and fear collided in her chest as she realized that not every threat came from the enemy outside. Some came from within. Caden noticed too, his expression darkening. "Protect me," he growled. "Don't let anyone." But before he could finish, the enemy struck again, and chaos swallowed the clearing. Lyra moved instinctively, using her power to shield Caden, to fight, to strike. Each pulse of energy radiated from her, golden and unyielding, yet dangerous. Every heartbeat throbbed with tension, with the sizzling electricity of forbidden attraction and the constant reminder that a single misstep could destroy everything. Then, in a moment that would haunt her, her energy spiraled out of control. A strike meant to hit the enemy arced toward Caden, and time seemed to slow. His eyes met hers, wide with trust and shock. "Lyra," he whispered, voice torn between fear and unspoken longing. The night erupted in screams, fire, and the raw scent of blood. Lyra's breath caught as she reached for him, powerless against the surge she had unleashed. Her hands blazed with golden light, her heart shattering at the sight of the man who had become her anchor teetering on the edge of death. The golden light from Lyra's hands flared brighter, blinding even herself for a moment. Caden's body shimmered under the intensity, his breathing ragged, chest heaving as he struggled to stay upright. "Lyra, control it," he barked, his voice carrying over the chaos of snarls and clashing claws. Yet there was no anger in his eyes, only an unwavering trust that tore through her fear like lightning. She clenched her fists tighter, feeling her power twist and writhe like a living thing. The forest trembled under the force, the ground cracking beneath the golden waves of energy. Wolves screamed, some retreating in terror, others succumbing to the fury that Lyra couldn't yet fully harness. And through it all, Caden's gaze held hers, grounding her even as the world around them spiraled into chaos. "You're stronger than you know," Caden said, voice hoarse but steady. "I've seen it, but you must focus." "Focus, Lyra." Her heart slammed against her ribcage. "Focus." She tried to calm the storm inside, drawing on the golden fire, shaping it, bending it to her will. Slowly, the chaos ebbed, replaced by a fierce, controlled glow that wrapped around her body like a protective armor. She felt the energy respond, snapping into harmony with her heartbeat. A shadow moved fast, a blur of black fur and steel fangs. The enemy leader had broken through, lunging toward Caden with murderous intent. Time seemed to freeze as Lyra's instincts took over. She flung her hands forward, a shield of blazing light erupting between Caden and the oncoming attack. The force slammed into the enemy, sending him sprawling backward, dazed and scorched. Caden stumbled forward, leaning into her power as if it were a tether holding him upright. "You're incredible," he murmured, voice low, and for a heartbeat, their proximity erased every thought but the raw, magnetic pull between them. His hand brushed hers, and a shiver of electricity shot through her, mingling with the adrenaline and fear. The enemy pack faltered under Lyra's display. Their movements became hesitant, unsure, as if the golden blaze had burned not just flesh but their courage. Lyra seized the moment, drawing on her instincts and every lesson Caden had ever taught her. She moved with grace and precision, her powers now an extension of herself rather than a wild, dangerous storm. But victory was fragile. A scream cut through the night, Caden's voice. Lyra's stomach dropped as she spun toward him. A smaller, hidden enemy had circled behind, lunging for Caden with lethal intent. Without thinking, she threw herself forward, the golden energy flaring violently as it collided with the assailant. The force sent them both crashing into the underbrush, Caden's chest pressing against hers in the aftermath. His eyes met hers, storm gray and molten with emotion. "Lyra," he breathed, voice trembling with something deeper than exhaustion. Desire, fear, and trust all tangled in the single word. She could feel it too, the undeniable pull between them, heightened by the danger, the adrenaline, the shared heartbeat of survival. Her hands lingered near his chest, the warmth from her power and her body mingling with his own. "Caden." She started, but the roar of the remaining enemy pack snapped her back to reality. There was no time for words, no room for hesitation. Together they surged forward, Lyra's golden energy guiding Caden through the battlefield. Each step, each strike was synchronized, a dance of power and instinct, fire and steel. Lyra could feel Caden's presence like a tether around her soul, anchoring her amidst the chaos. And in return, Caden moved with a precision that only came from absolute trust, protecting her even as she protected him. Hours or maybe minutes, she couldn't tell, passed in a blur of motion, the forest alive with fire, fur and blood. When the last enemy fell, silence descended like a blanket, heavy and almost unreal. Lyra collapsed to her knees, golden energy flickering and fading as exhaustion overtook her. Caden knelt beside her, fingers brushing her hair back from her wet, dirt-streaked face. "You survived," he said softly, the words a mixture of awe and relief. Lyra's heart clenched. She had survived, but only because he had been there, a constant, unwavering force she could rely on. "Only because of you," she murmured back, her voice cracking with emotion. She didn't just mean the battle. She meant everything. Every lesson, every touch, every fleeting glance that had left her heart pounding in ways she could never explain. Caden's hand moved to her cheek, thumb brushing away a smear of blood. His gaze burned into hers, intense and unyielding. "Lyra, I never doubted you for a second," he said, voice low and thick with emotion. "You're mine. The prophecy, it brought us here. And I swear, I'll never let anything take you from me." A shiver ran down Lyra's spine. She could feel the weight of destiny pressing on them, the prophecy she had feared yet longed for, now intertwining their fates more tightly than ever. Desire, fear, and unspoken promises wrapped around them in a golden cocoon, isolating them from the wreckage and chaos around. Caden lowered his head, forehead resting against hers. Their breaths mingled, ragged and warm in the night air. "Lyra Sky," he whispered, voice hoarse. "Survive a night in my bed, Omega, and I will set you free. But I warn you, once you stay, once you belong to me, there's no turning back." Her pulse thundered in her ears, heat flooding her veins. The golden energy of her power pulsed once more, responding to the ache in her heart and the raw desire that ignited between them. I'm yours," she whispered, words trembling yet certain. "Caden, I've always been yours." His grin was a dangerous, intoxicating curve, eyes gleaming with triumph and something far deeper. "Then we burn together," he murmured, hands sliding around her waist, pulling her close. The golden glow of her power enveloped them, sealing the bond forged through blood, fire, and unbreakable trust. Above, the storm began to wane, leaving the first hints of dawn filtering through the trees. The forest, once torn by battle, now lay silent, almost reverent, as if bearing witness to the beginning of something ancient and powerful. Lyra and Caden remained entwined, breaths mingling, hearts racing, a silent promise passing between them. The night had tested them, destiny had bound them, and nothing, not prophecy, not power, not the world, could ever separate them. And as the sun rose, casting a golden glow that mirrored the fire in her hands, Lyra realized something profound. She was no longer just a survivor. She was an alpha's mate, bound by blood, fate, and fire, and the world would never be the same again. The moon hung high, silver and unforgiving, casting a pale glow over the forest. Lyra Sky crouched behind the dense brush, every muscle in her body coiled like a spring. Her breathing was shallow, controlled, as she watched the clearing ahead. The chill of the night crept into her bones, but she hardly noticed. Her focus was on Caden's storm and the pack he had trusted, the pack that now seemed to harbor secrets darker than the night around them. Caden's silhouette emerged first. Tall, imposing, the kind of alpha presence that demanded attention even in the shadows. His white wolf, a majestic and loyal guardian, padded silently beside him, its amber eyes glinting like molten gold. He was scanning the area, senses sharp, every instinct honed from years of leading his pack through blood and fire. But tonight something was different. Lyra could see it in the set of his shoulders, the tension in his jaw. Caden was on edge, aware that something was lurking in the shadows, a threat even he couldn't yet name. "Lyra," Caden whispered, his voice low, carrying that dangerous edge that always made her heart race. "Stay close. Something's wrong." She nodded, pressing herself lower into the underbrush. Her pulse was racing, not just from fear, but from the strange energy that had been building inside her for weeks. The pull toward Caden, the unexplainable surge of power in her veins, it all seemed tied to the prophecy he had revealed, the one that spoke of her bloodline and the fate it could shape. Tonight she would see it fully awaken. Rustle. A whisper of movement. Lyra's ears pricked, her senses sharpened. Someone or something was approaching. Her wolf instincts flared, urging her to fight or flee. But she couldn't run, not when Caden was at risk. Caden's gaze swept the darkness, every sense alert. "They're here," he said, barely audible. His voice was steady, but the warning in it was clear. "Show yourself." For a moment silence answered. Then from the shadows a figure stepped forward, cloaked, hooded, moving with a predator's grace. Lyra's heart clenched. She knew that gait, that energy. It was familiar and terrifying. "Caden's storm," the figure said, voice smooth and venomous. "You thought you could control everything, didn't you?" Caden's hand flexed near the hilt of his dagger, eyes narrowing. "Reveal yourself," he demanded, a growl underlying his words. The figure threw back the hood. Lyra's breath caught. It was someone she never expected. Someone they had trusted, someone who had been in Caden's inner circle, feeding him half-truths and lies all along. "Darian," Caden spat, rage and disbelief mixing in his tone. You've betrayed us." Darian's lips curved into a cold, mocking smile. "Betrayal is such a harsh word for what I've done. I've simply chosen the side that ensures survival, the side that will reign supreme when your pack falls." Lyra stepped forward, her voice trembling with fury. You used him. Used all of us." Darian's eyes flicked toward her, a gleam of malice hidden beneath his calm exterior. "Especially her," he said, a sneer twisting his features. "She's the key to everything, isn't she, Caden? That little Omega of yours, your fated mate, holding the power your kind can only dream of controlling." Caden's body tensed, the air around him thickening as his alpha aura flared, a protective shield around Lyra. But Lyra felt something else, a rush of heat, a surge of energy coursing through her veins. It was the prophecy, the power that had been dormant awakening fully, demanding to be unleashed. Her hands trembled not with fear but with raw, untamed strength. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, and Caden's sharp intake of breath told her he saw it too. "You won't touch her," he growled, stepping forward, his presence towering, unyielding. "Not while I draw breath." Darian laughed, a sound cold and metallic like steel on stone. "Do you really think you can stop me, Alpha? She's mine for the taking, and soon your pack will crumble around you." Lyra's heart pounded, a mix of fear, rage, and exhilaration. She could feel the energy thrumming inside her, every fiber of her being screaming to protect Caden, to protect the pack, to assert the power that was hers by birthright. "You underestimate me," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." The air shifted. The shadows bent around her as if sensing the surge of her power. Caden's eyes widened slightly, admiration and awe flickering across his usually impassive features. "Lyra," he said, voice tight. "Be careful. Don't." But before he could finish, Lyra unleashed it. A wave of energy pulsed from her, invisible yet potent, knocking Darian backward. Leaves, dust, and debris swirled in a small vortex around her as her powers manifested in full. The rogue Alpha struggled to maintain his balance, his eyes wide with shock. Caden surged forward, closing the distance between them, his own energy flaring in tandem with hers. Together, their bond, their fated connection, became a force impossible to ignore. Darian staggered, realizing too late that he had underestimated both of them. But even as Lyra and Caden's combined power threatened to overwhelm him, a second figure emerged. Silent, deadly, lurking behind the trees. Lyra's stomach dropped. Someone else had been waiting, watching, biding their time. Impossible, Darian hissed, recognition dawning in his eyes. You! The newcomer stepped into the moonlight, face hidden behind a mask that glinted with silver. Their aura was dark, threatening, the kind of power that could rival Caden's own. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Whoever this was, they were no ordinary threat. They were a Shadow Alpha, a being who had been orchestrating events from the darkness, manipulating Darian, orchestrating the chaos that had plagued Caden's pack. Caden growled low in his throat. His body coiled, ready to strike. "Show yourself," he demanded, his voice carrying the weight of command and fury. The masked figure smiled, a cruel, twisted expression. "So predictable, Caden Storm," they said, voice distorted, echoing in the still night. "Always thinking you're in control. Always thinking you can protect your little Omega. But tonight the game changes." Lyra's heart raced. The prophecy, the bond, the power she had barely begun to understand. It was all leading to this moment. The true enemy had revealed themselves, and nothing would ever be the same. Darian, now cowering slightly under the masked Alpha's gaze, turned to Caden with pleading eyes. It's not too late. I can." Caden's glare cut him off, sharp and lethal. "You chose your path, Darian. Now face the consequences." Lyra stepped closer to Caden, feeling the warmth of his presence, the undeniable pull between them intensifying with every heartbeat. She was no longer just an Omega, she was a force, a weapon, a key to the survival of the packs and the fulfillment of the prophecy. But the enemy before them was powerful, cunning, and utterly unpredictable. The masked Alpha raised a hand, energy crackling around them, and Lyra instinctively mirrored the motion, her own power flaring in response. The forest around them seemed to come alive, the wind whipping, trees bending, as if sensing the titanic clash about to unfold. "Lyra," Caden said, voice tense yet protective, "stay close. Whatever happens, don't let go." Her hand found his, and for a brief, electrifying moment, the world seemed to pause. Their bond, fated and undeniable, surged between them, a promise of strength and unity in the face of the darkness closing in. Darian groaned, falling to his knees, powerless against the sheer force of what Lyra had become. But the masked Alpha advanced, every step deliberate, a shadow of death in motion. Lyra inhaled deeply, feeling the energy course through her, mingling with Caden's own power. She was ready, finally ready, to face the true enemy. But even as they prepared to strike, a sudden, deafening roar split the night air. From the treetops, creatures she had never seen before descended, twisted, dark beings allied with the masked Alpha. Caden's grip tightened on hers, their energies intertwining, the tension so thick it could be cut with a blade. And then in the chaos Lyra saw it, a flicker of movement, a whisper of intent. The enemy's plan was larger than they had imagined. The prophecy wasn't just about her, Caden, or even the packs. It was about power, domination, and a future written in blood. As the first clash erupted, Lyra realized one terrifying truth. The battle was only beginning. And no matter how strong she had become, the shadows waiting in the night would stop at nothing to see her fall, and take Caden with her. The enemy had been unmasked, but the war was far from over. Lyra's gaze met Caden's, their fated bond glowing brighter than the moon above. "Together," she whispered. "Always," he replied, and together they faced the darkness. But even as they fought, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that someone else, someone far more dangerous, was still watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And when that moment came, nothing would be safe, not their bond, not their power, not their lives. The wind howled like a beast in the night, rattling the windows of Caden Storm's fortress. Lyra Sky's heart pounded, not just from the chill, but from the weight of what she knew awaited her. Tonight everything would change. Tonight destinies would collide. Caden stood across the grand hall, his shadow stretching long and commanding under the flickering torchlight. His eyes, silver like a storm-washed sky, held a storm of their own. "Lyra," he said, his voice low, vibrating with a dangerous authority. "Everything we fought for, every secret, every danger, it all leads to this moment. You are the key. Cannot fail. And I will not let you fail either." Lyra's gaze flickered to the darkened windows, then back to him. "Caden, if I fail, I can't even imagine what will happen." Her voice shook, but not from fear. From the fire inside that had been growing since the first night in his bed, that first impossible spark of their fated bond. The air thickened. Outside, the enemy's pack had encircled the fortress. Shadows moved like predators, their eyes glinting with malice and bloodlust. The rival Alpha, their true adversary, had revealed himself at last. His laugh cut through the cold night air, a cruel mocking sound that promised destruction. Caden's jaw tightened. "Stay close," he growled. "I will get us through this. But we fight on my terms." Lyra nodded, feeling the bond between them pulse, stronger than ever. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and fierce, and it matched the rhythm of her own. But the danger was unlike anything they had faced before. The first wave of attackers struck like shadows made flesh. Caden moved with lethal precision, muscles coiled, every strike a dance of dominance and control. Lyra felt her pulse quicken. She summoned the hidden power that had stirred within her for weeks, letting it surge through her veins. Flames of silver light shot from her hands, illuminating the hall, driving back the enemy. And then, disaster. A blast of dark energy aimed at Caden, ricocheted toward him. Instinctively, Lyra lunged, redirecting the attack, but at a cost. The energy scorched her arm, searing pain exploding through her body. Caden's scream tore through the chaos, and for a second she feared she had failed. "I've got you!" Caden roared, his hands gripping her tightly. The fire in his eyes was not just rage. It was desperation, need, and something more primal that made Lyra's pulse race even faster. "Do not let this end us, not tonight." But the enemy was cunning. They had anticipated every move, every weakness. Caden's pack fought valiantly, but the rival Alpha's forces were relentless. And in the center of it all, Lyra felt the pull of her destiny like never before. Visions surged in her mind. A prophecy, fragments of truth and terror intertwined. She saw power beyond imagining, the fate of not just her pack, but all Alpha clans resting on her shoulders. And she realized what she must do, but the choice tore at her soul. "Caden," she whispered, voice trembling. "I can save everyone, but it might mean—" Her words faltered as she looked into his eyes. The man she had grown to love, the Alpha she could not live without, stood there, trusting her implicitly. And she was forced to face the ultimate question: love or duty? The enemy's leader lunged, a shadow of death closing in. Caden's roar filled the hall, a sound of pure defiance, and Lyra felt the bond between them ignite. She could feel him calling to her, every fiber of her being drawn to his, urging her to fight, not just for survival, but for the love that neither had dared to admit. Lyra made her choice, stepping into the heart of the enemy's dark energy. Power surged from her like a tidal wave, blinding, unstoppable. But in that moment, she glimpsed Caden's eyes widen in horror. Something had gone wrong. She realized she had endangered him, even as she unleashed her full potential. Time slowed. The hall trembled. The enemy faltered, then surged forward again. Caden was caught in the center of her unleashed power. She reached for him, heart screaming, knowing that she had only moments to save him before the consequences of her choice became irreversible. "Caden, hold on!" she shouted, voice breaking with desperation and unspent emotion. And then, a blinding flash of light, a deafening roar, and everything went silent. When the echoes faded, Lyra stood alone in the ruins of the hall. Smoke and dust hung in the air. Caden's figure was gone, or was he? Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Her powers had saved countless lives, shattered the enemy's forces, but at what cost? The prophecy had only just begun to unfold, and Lyra knew that her journey was far from over. One choice had opened doors that could never be closed. One decision had the power to reshape destiny, but it came at the ultimate risk. And in the shadows she could feel it. The enemy was not defeated. The battle was not over. And Caden, her fated mate, was somewhere waiting for her or in danger she might not be able to undo. Lyra's chest heaved. She swallowed back her fear and fury, knowing that part 2 would demand more from her than she had ever imagined. The night had tested her limits, and the dawn would bring new battles, new betrayals, and new desires that could not be denied. She stepped forward, fists clenched, eyes burning with determination. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Don't miss part 2 of Survive a Night in My Bed. Omega and I'll set you free. The Alpha King Fated Mate. Subscribe now, hit the like button, and stay tuned to witness Lyra and Caden's epic journey continue, where love, power, and destiny collide in ways you've never imagined.